Hey guys, listen up.
This is the SEC Insider Hit, powered by Miss Kelly Furniture, Mississippi's number one sleep store.
The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the awesome selection of Boar's Head premium meats, cheeses, and hummus at any corner market grocery store in the state of Mississippi, including their new one in Macomb and another new one coming soon in Starkville, Mississippi. But Corner Market Grocery Store, Northside Drive, Fondren, and Bellhaven. Woo! This is the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. We're streaming live for you on thezone1059.com and the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Watch the show on our YouTube channel. Search Out of Bounds Sports. We welcome in NFL insider Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. And Steve joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. All right, Steve Palazzolo, I want to talk about Dak Prescott's first half stats compared to his second half stats the last couple of weeks. In the first half, some struggles. Second half, red hot. What do y'all see at Pro Football Focus?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough to sort out first and second half splits, or to build a story off of it. Sometimes it's just how guys, just how things are trending or whatever it might be. But I think overall, Dak's playing really well. Certainly the Cowboys' offense has been much better since he's come back, and much better since the Cooper Rush weeks. And I think that was what I think made those Cooper Rush weeks, really encouraging for the Cowboys was, okay, Dak's going to come back. The offense is going to be better. We know we've got one of the best defenses in the NFL. But, yeah, I think Dak's throwing the ball well, making good decisions. And, even on Thanksgiving, a couple fluky type of plays in the first half, those 2 interceptions, but he comes back strong. So I think overall the Dallas offense is getting better and better. It's good to see Michael Gallup, getting more involved there, and I think they're starting to peak at the right time.
Where do you have the Dallas Cowboys in your NFC power rankings?
Yeah, honestly, I think they're a better team than the Vikings, right? So I think you look at Dallas at 8-3 and the Vikings are 9-2. A lot of people their power rankings are basically just record. Right? It's like, the Eagles have to be 1. They're 10-1, and then give me the 9-2 teams. But I really think it's the Cowboys and the Eagles atop the NFC right now, and probably the 49ers. Once they, if they continue to find their groove and play well. So I think the Eagles and Cowboys look like the 2 best teams. They're, the Cowboys now have the ability to win multiple ways. The Eagles have shown their ability to win in every different style, with the run game, with the pass game, with pass defense, whatever it might be. We'll see with the Vikings. They've got another tough one with the Jets. I think I've always just kind of been expecting them to taper off a little bit. I think they will at some point. So I think it's Eagles and Cowboys atop the NFC right now.
Okay, we always talk NFL quarterbacks with you, and Dak Prescott leads the way a lot of times. Here he is, whatever he is, 6 years in, and he's had a lot of success. There's been some bumps in the road, but you've mentioned sometimes quarterbacks are what they are at some point. So how do you balance that? Where can he get a little bit better, Steve, or can he?
Yeah, no, I think anybody can. I think for Dak, if you look at his turnover-worthy play rate, that's something we do. We don't necessarily look at interceptions, but like on the surface last year, if you include the playoffs, he had 38 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, which looks exceptional on the surface, right? But there was a little top-heavy in a couple games. They beat up on the Eagles' backups at the end. That helped. But the turnover-worthy play rate for Dak has been over 3% for the last 4 years, including, his injury season of 2020. And you see the best quarterbacks not at 3%, but closer to 2%, right? So that sounds minuscule, but we're talking about a handful of plays here and there where I think Dak could do a better job of taking care of the ball. And that includes, bad fumbles, not just passes that should be intercepted. So if we're talking about, hey, 6 years into his career, 7 years into his career, where should Dak be improving? I think that's one of them. And I think last year, I know he was injured and the whole thing, but he did go through that stretch where he was putting the ball in harm's way a ton in the second half of the season. And even this year, in his 6 games, he's got 4 of them with 2 turnover-worthy plays or more. Now, again, sometimes they don't show up on the stat sheet, or sometimes they're not picked off, or whatever it is. But I think that would be one place where if Dak could do just, 1 pass per game that he could have back, I think that could go a long way into create a more efficient offense.
Okay, do you think that this is that they have the ability to get to the NFC Championship game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like they did last year. I mean, it's at this point of the season, you're saying, does this team have the pieces? Dallas had the pieces last year. They just laid an egg against San Francisco at home in the playoffs. They have to play better once they get into the tournament, so to speak. So once again, with a guy like Micah Parsons, who is a game changer on defense, what that does for the rest of the pass rush, Dan Quinn's done a really nice job there. They could cover on the back end. And then offensively, we've seen them, get Tony Pollard involved a little bit more. Maybe take the ball out of Zeke's hands and use him in more favorable situations along the goal line. All of that stuff is good as the Cowboys come together, figure out what they are, and then the pass offense getting better and better as the weeks go on. You get a little bit more from Gallup, as I mentioned. CeeDee Lamb emerges as the number 1. You get a number 2 tight end like Jake Ferguson creating after the catch as a rookie. So a lot of my early season questions, who's going to produce outside or just as a receiver, I think they're starting to answer those. So I think the Cowboys, absolutely, they've got all the pieces in place and they can make a run this year, just like they could have last year.
Oh, man. Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, on the Yuengling Lager guest line. So where would you rank Dan Quinn, the Dallas defensive coordinator, as far as coordinators in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't have a coordinator ranking off the top of my head. I'll say this, though. I think he's getting head coach opportunity probably at the end of the season. I think people are going to look at Quinn and, whether it's Indianapolis or whatever jobs are available. I think Dan Quinn's going to be at the top of the list for some teams because he had some success in Atlanta. But I think what I'm most impressed about is, he came from this Seattle Seahawks tree where they really just played the same coverage over and over and over again. And that's how he coached football for the Falcons. And that sounds bad, but it's not, it was a successful strategy in Seattle and a couple other places. But Quinn has really evolved quite a bit with the Cowboys. He's stunting and twisting more than any coach in the league right now defensively. He's taken it must be nice to have a Micah Parsons, but you have to credit him for not just saying, hey, Micah, you're just going to play linebacker. He has adjusted to Micah Parsons' skill set and adjusted everything else around him. So I think that's been the most impressive thing is this next time around as a defensive coordinator. I think we've seen much more versatility from Dan Quinn, and I think that's helped the Cowboys quite a bit. They've got decent personnel, and I think Quinn's I think he's been one of the best defensive coordinators in the league now the last couple of years, and I think he'll get a look as a head coach and at least get interviewed as a head coach coming this offseason.
Sure. Boy, he's done a great job. And had a hell of a career with the Seahawks. And, I mean, good grief. If he wins that Super Bowl game against the Patriots, we're talking about a totally we put him on another level and pedestal. But anyway, it didn't work out. Aaron Rodgers, 4-8. They're 1-5 in the division. Where do you see this going, Steve?
Man, I mean, I think if you ask me today, which you are, I think I see Rodgers maybe getting traded at the end of the season. I don't think Rodgers wants to end his career on the 2022 season. There's a difference between what Rodgers is going through and what, like, say, Tom Brady's going through right now than Peyton Manning and Drew Brees. Peyton Manning and Drew Brees had clear physical limitations at the end of their respective careers. Rodgers and Brady do not. Rodgers is still whipping the ball around. He's still physically there. Does he miss more throws than he has in the past? Absolutely. Has the situation made things a little bit worse? Absolutely. But I think Rodgers is going to evaluate himself at the end of the year and say, I can still play. That was a rough season. But I think things that may have run their course in Green Bay. You know, the big discussion this offseason was, you lost Devontae Adams, but the Packers are going to put together the best defense they've had in 10 years. So don't worry. We'll make up for it on defense. And their defense has been terrible. We just saw it on Sunday night. They gave up 360 yards on the ground. That's been a consistent theme. So I don't think Rodgers or the Packers are going to put together I don't think Rodgers is going to see this team put together in Green Bay in 2023 that's going to be encouraging. And I think the Packers might just look at this and say, all right, we need to cut ties now because we don't have the financial ability to build the team around Aaron Rodgers. We'll take a $40 million cap hit, which is better than a $100 million cap hit after 2023. I think we might see them just part ways and Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets or the Commanders or whoever it is this offseason and tries to give it one more go.
Wow. Okay. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, Steve Palazzolo, a Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. What about when you look at the Titans? Well, first of all, the Titans and the Eagles this weekend, and what Vrabel's doing there. They move off A.J. Brown, which was a terrible decision, but they're still 7-4. They don't have a big-time quarterback. Can you imagine if, some things lined up in Nashville for Vrabel and he even had a top 12 QB and they locked in on another big-time offensive skill weapon like an A.J. Brown, what he could do with that team?
I mean, I think Tannehill was top 12 the last couple of years, and then he had A.J. Brown. Look, they're good. I mean, the Titans are good. I've been so impressed with what Mike Vrabel has done with all the injuries and everything. The Titans are a tough team to figure out, though, because none of your baseline metrics scream, contender. But that was the same thing last year, and they had the number one seed. They're always good at the things that are generally tough to sustain, like red zone offense and defense and, just situational football. And I think that's where you have to credit Vrabel and his coaching staff and everything they've done. Now, when you look at the Titans, they haven't done a lot against good teams. And I think that's a factor. They got smoked by the Bills. They ended up losing to the Chiefs, even though it was in overtime. They lose to the Bengals. They lost to the Giants. Any team with a decent record, and the Titans have lost. So that's, even though it's not a conference game, it's a big game against the Eagles. The Titans have to prove that they can beat good teams. They still have to play Dallas. They still have to play the Chargers. They got the Jaguars twice. The Titans have to prove that they can beat some good teams. But I'm so impressed with what Vrabel's done, because I do think he came into the season with a worse roster than he had last year. Without A.J. Brown, without a tangible replacement, and an offensive line that was still being overhauled that doesn't pass protect really well. So I'm impressed with the Titans, how they play football, the physical brands that they play. But now it's got to translate into wins against good teams. That's where I think they've been a step behind so far this year.
Okay, if Steve Palazzolo was a general manager and you could hire any of the coaches in the league right now, head coaches, who would you hire today?
Probably Andy Reid.
All right, take out Andy Reid. Hold on. Take out Andy Reid.
Take out Andy Reid and Bill Belichick.
Yeah, take out those two because they're veterans. They're obviously both great Hall of Famers.
Right.
I'm interested to see if you go Mike McDaniels, Vrabel, Shanahan, someone else. Who would Steve Palazzolo hire?
So Kyle Shanahan and Mike Vrabel are the two that leap to mind. Mike McDaniel could be there quickly, though. Got to be honest. But I think Shanahan is probably the guy I would lean to, because he's just always created offense, no matter who you've given him at quarterback. And I think if you're giving me a head coach, I love that as a foundation. If you want to, now I would work with Shanahan on his, game management and aggressiveness and some of these other things. But I think the baseline of, I could put a quarterback into my system and produce offense, run game and pass game, is an awesome starting point. Vrabel is different in that you give me, third string corners and I'll motivate them to play well, and that's really valuable too. Vrabel feels very much like a Mike Tomlin in that we're just going to have a really high baseline every single year. And in the years that you give me the best team, we have a chance to win it all. So I think it's Kyle Shanahan and Vrabel that are at the top of my list.
I love both
Right
those
now.
guys. But Blake and I have fallen in love with Mike McDaniels. Like every clip
No,
that we
that's
see
fine.
of him,
Yeah.
we bookmark on Twitter and we watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, we started talking about him last year. I know you've known about him for years, but we started talking about him last year. I mean, the fact that Mike McDaniels, the head coach of the Dolphins, played wide receiver at Yale and then worked his way into the league, and he's just a little freak and a little genius, and he's so damn funny. Yeah, did you see that clip of, I'm sure you did. Well, I don't know. You actually have a job. We don't really. But did you see that clip of Mike McDaniels talking to Tua Tagovailoa on the sideline, and they were talking about YouTube and each other, and McDaniels was like, man, I pulled you up on YouTube from high school, and holy smokes, your fundamentals were awful.
No, I didn't see that part. I
He used another word, Blake.
What
What was it? Not fundamentals.
Mechanics.
Mechanics were terrible.
Mechanics.
That's what he said. Did you see that?
I did see the clip. No, I didn't see that one in particular. Was that attached to when they said McDaniel pulled like 700 plays to build to his confidence or whatever it was? And
no. All right.
went through all
and you know
700
what's
plays
funny
with him,
about
but-
this? It's in a game. Like Tua is
Yeah.
in uniform, and Mike McDaniels is telling him, "Hey, when you told me you YouTubed me, I YouTubed you and realized that your mechanics were terrible in high school." And they started laughing about it.
It's great, man. I mean, that was like Joe Montana, pointing out John Candy in the stands right before the game-winning drive against the Bengals in the Super Bowl, right? Like, you just find ways to relax in tense moments. That is part of what seems like McDaniel's genius, right? His ability to keep it loose, but also just be a good X's and O's guy as well.
And I'm so impressed with what those two have been able to do and the chemistry, and McDaniel's talking about what all he's done with Tua. Yeah, that guy's a little freak. Blake, do you have a question for Steve Palazzolo on the Yuengling Lager guest line?
It's funny you went to McDaniel because I was thinking I was going to ask my question about Mike McDaniel before you even asked him about who he likes as a head coach. I don't know that you watch way more and you know way more coaches. To me, he is so unique and so different in the way that he relates to players, and especially the quarterback position. And all the stuff that's come out with all the negativity that was around Tua, and his approach of just being like, hey, we'll just maximize everything you do well. And we're going to focus on being good, and we're going to find out what you do well. I know other coaches do that in different ways, but his vocal kind of way of approaching it, is there another guy that's like him? Has there been another guy like him in the league that you can think of? To me, it's just a so openly different way to approach coaching a game that we've always said is about being tougher and more aggressive and more physical and more mean.
Well, the funny thing is, so Kyle Shanahan, who I was just talking about, hey, he always creates offense and maximizes his team and all that stuff. Kyle's personality, I don't think, is anything like McDaniel's. I mean, they were working together hand in hand for years, but Kyle's known for being in the film room, being like, "What are you doing, dude? Why'd you miss this throw? Why'd you, he's pretty harsh, at times, I believe. And the fact, and I don't know, maybe McDaniel is, maybe there's tough love in there too, and we only see the fun part of it. But I don't know. I mean, the McDaniel stuff is fascinating because middle of last season, all of a sudden he's doing press conferences. He wasn't talking a whole lot before that. And it was like his brand was built in the middle of last season doing these press conferences for the Niners as offensive coordinator, and everybody's believing what you guys believe. He's funny and this and that, and I think he is. It's just funny that I think we've only seen the good side of him. Maybe there is a bad side. Maybe there is a tough love type of side. I'm not really sure, but yeah, he definitely is unique in what we've seen through the years. I don't know that his style is the only answer, right? Because you do have a Kyle Shanahan who's tough on his quarterbacks and gets results, but McDaniel has definitely probably opened eyes as to what the CEO, right? That's what head coach is, what the CEO of your football team should look like, because he's got that Gen Z type of approach that seems to be working so far.
And the protege mentor played this weekend. I can't wait. I think that's
it's going to be awesome.
Oh,
it's going to be awesome.
I think that's so cool for our listeners. Dolphins 49ers on Fox at 3:05, and I'm here for that. Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus on the Out of Bounds Show. Steve, is Russell Wilson a shot fighter?
Shot fighter, as in
Is he done, or is it?
Yeah.
is it the environment and what's going on around him, or is he done and on the 18th hole?
It's tough to say he's done. I mean, the guy's 34 years old. He just turned 34 a couple days ago. It looks terrible. I mean, it looks horrible. Everything looks bad. But physically, he's gotten a little bit worse too, which is a concern. Where a lot of quarterbacks are doing. Matt Ryan's looking bad physically, but the dude's 38, right? And we're talking about Rodgers and Brady never looking bad physically and changing the game there. But I think at the end of the season, the Broncos they're tied to Wilson. They have to make Russell Wilson work. I think at the end of the season, they're going to say we have to get somebody in here who's had success with him, and Darrell Bevell or Brian Schottenheimer, somebody. And it's ironic because those are the guys that Seattle fans were trying to run out of town because they weren't using Russ well enough. But I really think the Broncos have to maximize this thing. There's a little bit of Russ's shot, and there's a little bit of, okay, they're trying to put him into Nathaniel Hackett's offense, and maybe it's just not going to work at all. So I feel like they have to go to somebody that has had success with Russell Wilson and bring him in and try to rejuvenate him. I'm not ready to write him off because he's young, and he's still just a couple of years removed from being good. But the trend line is terrible. He's gotten worse and worse since the middle of 2020, whatever that is. He's gotten worse and worse, and it's not looking good right now.
Deshaun Watson on the field this weekend with the Cleveland Browns. What are your expectations?
I would assume he's got to be a little rusty. He's got 700 days since he's played football, other than the 5 passes in the preseason. But the Browns have the ability to kind of make life easy for him and run the ball with Nick Chubb and work play action and just, some basic concepts. So I think he'll look fine. Watson, he was a very good quarterback who I think took a massive step forward in 2020, despite the team taking a big step back. That was his best season. 90-plus PFF grade, took better care of the ball. They only won 4 games, but I think you saw his star power on the field. So I think could be a little rusty. Might take him a couple weeks to get back, but I think once he gets going, Watson does elevate that Browns offense. That's already been pretty good with Jacoby Brissett.
I've got a minute. Is Trevor Lawrence a bust? Is that extreme? Is it just because the Jaguars are dysfunctional, or is he playing, according to your tape and analytics, is he playing good football, Steve?
No, he's played much better in recent weeks. I think if you asked me this 3 weeks ago, I think we're having more of a conversation. But the last 3 weeks, he's been fantastic, including that game-winning drive. Like that was the game-winning drive he had against the Ravens last week. That was the thing I've been waiting for. I thought that was going to show up in week 1 of his rookie season, Trevor Lawrence. He'd have some rookie bumps along the way, but I always thought that he would be able to just zip the ball in there 20 yards at a time and win some games. We finally saw him do that. So Lawrence is on the right track, I think.
Would 10 seconds? Would you take Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa today?
I'd take Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, cool.
Potential's still there.
All right, Dak for MVP. Have a great weekend.
Oh yeah.
See you, buddy. Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, on the Out of Bounds show. And the interview was brought to you by Patron Tequila. Check out Patron Reposado, Patron Añejo, or Patron Extra Añejo at Briarwood Wine and Spirits or your local wine and spirit shop. Good morning. Welcome in. We've got some delicious audio straight ahead on Kiffin and Freeze.